Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Confessions of the Other Mother, Nonbiological Lesbian Moms Tell All. Edited by Harlyn Aizley. Narrated by Sarah Beth Pfeifer. Mommy Delirious. Introduction. Just moments after I gave birth to our daughter, my partner, Faith, scooped up the baby, cooed into her squishy newborn face, and said, "Hello there, I'm your mommy." I wanted to kill her. Faith, that is. Granted, I was doped up on hormones, painkillers, and fatigue. Granted, I had been up all night struggling to learn how to place my cracked and excruciating nipples into our child's rosebud of a mouth so that I might offer up every ounce of nourishment and energy I had left in me. Granted, I had not had an Advil, a glass of wine, or sushi in a very long time. Still, who was Faith to call herself Mommy? I wanted to be Mommy, the only Mommy. Yes, we both had planned for the birth of our child. Yes, we both had been present and accounted for at her conception. Yes, we both were women, but hadn't I earned it? And so, we were off, into the beautiful, though often unexpectedly complex, terrain of two-mommy parenting. To extend the metaphor, we soon learned that this new land that was our home, while frequented by many, remained virtually uncharted. Where were the guidebooks? Where were the stories from other settlers? As a new biological mother, I had at my disposal mommy's groups, lactation consultants, my obstetrician, and my own mother, all of whom wished to share advice, support, and stories of their own similar initiation into parenthood. But where was Faith's experience? Where were the anecdotes from women who, like Faith, had opted to postpone or forgo their own birthing experience to assist their female partner in hers? Where were the tales of life at home raising another woman's child, a child who is also your own, but in a wholly different way? Faith needed them. I needed them. And one day, our daughter would need them too. A search for literature on the subject revealed a sad wealth of horrid and fearsome custody tales, news, and scientific reports about the battles between women over their children, made all the more painful and divisive as they had the added pressure of creating precedents for custody cases yet to come. There were stories about states that forbid adoption by same-sex parents, and harrowing tales of a biological mother's relatives exercising their assumed blood rights over those of a non-biological mother. While valid and critical to our understanding of the social and political impact of same-sex parenting, these stories provided little in the way of support and/or relief. They emphasized the need for adequate legal safeguards, wills and powers of attorney, second-parent same-sex adoption when possible, but shed no light on the everyday experiences of the non-biological mother. Legalities aside, lacking were what we needed most: tales from the front lines of non-biological motherhood, optimistic, funny stories of otherwise happy and contented lesbian moms struggling to make sense of their family structures at the playground, at PTA meetings, in carpools listening to 3-year-olds discuss what it means to have two moms, or when slamming headlong into unanticipated maternal longings, their own, as well as those of their biomom partner. As far as this biomom was concerned, the reluctance to share the title Mommy was just the tip of my biological iceberg. The narratives in this anthology are stories from these settlers. They are anecdotes about what it means to be a macho butch politico more accustomed to passing as a man than as a mother, or a woman grieving her own infertility while supporting a partner who has easily become pregnant for the second time. They are honest, candid confessions of jealousy experienced while watching a partner breastfeed and exasperation at having to come out publicly 12 times a week in response to the question, "Who's the daddy?" These are the stories from childbirth class, from the nursery in the middle of the night, and the tot lot first thing in the morning. They are humorous and poignant, exquisitely personal, and deeply reflective. Confessions of the Other Mother is not a guidebook, because as any of the women featured here will tell you, there are no universal rules for two-mommy parenting, or any parenting for that matter. It's more like a campfire around which a non-biological lesbian mom can listen to tales told by a bunch of gals making the same journey as she. It's a place where that same exhausted mom might at last slap her knee and exclaim, "I know exactly what you mean." The essays that make up the first part of the book, Birth, Babies, and Beyond, explore the experience of non-biological motherhood from conception to raising children. Almost every author addresses the issue universal to lesbian couples desirous of biological children. Which one of us will get pregnant? But from there, they diverge, with some women using the brief telling of a moment in their lives as parents or parents-to-be to convey the emotional significance of their role. Watching a partner breastfeed, battling insensitive bureaucracy in the maternity ward. Others consider the place in society their mothering has created with longer pieces that capture both the personal and political sides of non-biological mothering. Still others challenge the presumptions of language, suggesting that all female parents need not be mothers, and that words like non-biological and non-birth mother are negatives that do no justice to the very positive fact of a woman's parenting. Because lesbians have at their disposal varieties of parenting that far exceed those available to couples sporting opposite genders, I have included 2 shorter sections. Mucking with the Stuff gives voice to women who have straddled both sides of the mothering fence. In it, we hear from 2 biological moms whose partners chose to become pregnant, as well as from 2 non-biological mothers who later birthed a child. In Arriving When the Show Has Started, a lesbian stepmom shares her story of picking up the parenting pieces upon uniting with a recently divorced woman and her 2 sons. Some of the essays are funny. Some are sad. Some are both. All are riveting enough to keep you up at night pondering the meaning of motherhood, parenthood, and the nuclear family. This is a campfire, after all. Hold tight to your marshmallow. During share time at a group for new biological mommies, I confessed my dirty little secret about wanting to be the only mom in the house, wanting to delegate to Faith some new word that does not yet exist to represent her role as parent. Thinking myself homophobic, an embarrassment to gay parents everywhere, I was shocked when the only other lesbian mom in the group nodded her head. "Me too," she said, guiltily. As both Faith and I are Jewish, albeit of the non-practicing variety, a well-meaning heterosexual mommy suggested Faith refer to herself as Ima, the Hebrew word for mother. This seemed to me like a great idea. Maybe we could even join a temple to lend it context. "You be Ima," was Faith's response. "But I'm her mother, her American mother." "So am I." that it took me some time to grasp that Faith was as much our daughter's mother as she was a red-blooded blue state American, I blame now, thanks to my contributors, on the limitations of language rather than my own lack of comprehension. With no name for her role, Faith had only her heart to guide her as she carved a place in the world for herself and our family. Sheepishly, I shoved over and made room. Ultimately, our daughter decided for us. She refers to us as Mommy Faith and Mommy Harley. Sometimes, to save breath, when either one of us will do, she shouts from across the house, "Mommies!" This collection is dedicated to Faith and to non-biological lesbian moms everywhere who grapple not only with the usual trials and tribulations of parenthood, but also with the sometimes arduous and revolutionary task of creating their own role as mother-parent in their homes, as well as in the outside Cheerios and Elmo-filled world. It's for the women who remind us that just because they are women with children, they are not necessarily moms or mommies. It's for those who, until now, had to look toward fathers in an effort to locate themselves in the vast open waters of parenting. These are your stories. May they provide support and laughter, strength and kinship, and may they serve to educate the rest of us as to the historical enormity and cultural significance of mothering. Have at it, girls. Harlyn Aizley, Boston, Massachusetts. Part 1. Birth, Babies, and Beyond. Watching. Amy Klempnauer Miller. It has been 3 weeks and 2 days since my partner Jane and I stood in our bright pink bathroom, gaping as the second line on the pregnancy test stick turned indisputably blue. After 10 years of talking about it, a year and a half of trying to get pregnant myself, and a squirt of thawed donor sperm for Jane, we are apparently going to have a baby. Nearly every day since then, Jane has crawled home from her job as an administrator at the University of Minnesota and gone immediately to sleep, lying like a fallen soldier on the battlefield. She hauls herself up to wolf back a plate or two of food, then shuffles back to her pillows. She lies unmoving on the bed or the couch, our 2 cats sprawled blissfully on top of her. In these early days of gestation, she is all hormone, her breasts swelling, her energy sapped by a creature still smaller than a sesame seed. Meanwhile, my inner guy is coming out of the closet. I feel urgently, irrationally protective of Jane. I want to stand guard over her, to protect her from drafts, from worry, from bacteria-laden soft cheese, from cat litter, from free-floating germs. I want to tell her what to do and what not to do. While she sleeps, I go outside and mow the lawn. I pull weeds in the garden. I turn the compost. I climb an aluminum ladder and clean the gutters. I sweat. I stink. I feel positively virile. Is this the role of the non-biological lesbian mom? To be a faux dad? Am I becoming a DH, the dear husband, or designated hitter for all I know, that all of the straight women write about on the internet discussion boards I visit? I don't feel like I need to mimic the paternal role, yet it seems to be finding and claiming me. I am a little worried that I am somehow fueling the stereotypes of right-wing complementarians who argue that every woman needs a man, every man a woman, and every child one of each in order to have proper balance in the universe. Maybe major change inherently promotes traditionalism, a grasping for the models most familiar, if not necessarily the most fitting. Or maybe the experience of the unpregnant partner, whatever the gender, follows a predictable pattern, and it's just that most of the unpregnant partners in the world are men. We used to think that I would be the one to get pregnant. Month after month, I went to a clinic in a suburb south of Minneapolis, where the very friendly nurses inseminated me with the sperm of first one donor and then another. I took progesterone to better the chances that a newly fertilized egg would successfully implant in my uterus. I had a variety of blood tests to make sure that my follicle-stimulating hormone and my prolactin and my thyroid-stimulating hormone levels were all normal. I had ultrasounds to make sure that I ovulated. I had a hysterosalpingogram to determine that my fallopian tubes were unclogged. I refused to take Clomid or to have Jane give me hormone shots because we had both decided well in advance that we did not want to start down what looked to us like the seductive path of just one more try fertility treatments. That, and we were half convinced that we'd end up with a litter of 6 babies. After 20 or so inseminations, I stopped. We didn't know at the time what our next step would be. Jane was not yet convinced that she wanted to be pregnant. We briefly explored adoption. We went to work. We came home. We had dinner. We talked. We spent a year this way. Finally, Jane decided that she was ready. We went back to the same clinic, where one of the same nurses did the insemination, but this time, Jane lay on the table, and I sat in the chair. I expected that we would need to give it 5 or 6 tries. Jane got pregnant the very first time. Now, in those moments when Jane is not sleeping, we go to the bookstore. We are both believers in the idea that reading bestows control. The trick is finding the right books. In the pregnancy and parenting section of the store, Jane settles down on a chair. There is a mound of books by her side, all explaining to expectant mothers in more or less exhaustive detail what is about to happen to their bodies, what they need to worry about, how to worry less, how to exercise, why they shouldn't exercise too much, and on and on. Meanwhile, I find myself drawn to books for new fathers. Compared with the absolute onslaught of books for pregnant women who apparently have nothing to do but read, there are surprisingly few volumes directed at men. Based on what I find, dads still seem to be remarkably marginal to the whole process of reproduction. The general pregnancy books mention men in an almost offhand way, as in, it's good to have dad involved, or dad can help with parenting by giving baby a bottle. Many of the books actually targeted at men emphasize manliness. Book jackets designed to look like men's clothing, guys' guides to the mysteries of pregnancy. They are gestational positioning systems, promising to help men navigate the wilderness of pregnancy. None of these books expect men to be naturally good at much of anything relating to parenthood, except maybe teaching a kid to throw a ball. They assume anxiety and a certain cluelessness on the part of new fathers, which may be why I find them consoling. Books for guys provide the most basic information, while books for mom are far more sophisticated. While dad learns how to keep from dropping the baby, mom learns the various hypotheses about what causes colic, the dangers of strep B, and how to do yoga with an infant. Finally, I buy a book for stay-at-home dads. I like the topics it covers: balancing childcare and work, defining responsibilities for housework, developing shared family goals. Now that we know Jane is pregnant, we are actively discussing the prospect that I quit my job and take care of the baby. After spending so much time and energy deciding to have a child, neither one of us wants to hand our baby over to a stranger, no matter how much more they might know than we do. Many of the questions faced by stay-at-home dads are also mine. Should I quit my job or work part-time? How will I feel about not earning money? Will it affect my self-esteem? How about my virility? How will I feel about being the principal caregiver of our child, but not the biological mom? How will Jane feel about going back to work and leaving our baby with me? Thinking of myself as a dad, maybe a stay-at-home dad, feels a little safer to me than thinking of myself as a mom, especially when I'm not the one who is pregnant. I distrust maternal instinct, particularly my own. Among the dads, I feel less anxious about becoming a parent. I at least know how to operate the washing machine. In contrast to these guys, I am positively prepared. The truth of the matter is that I feel more at home among the dads because I have never thought of myself as a particularly good woman. I have never regretted being female, nor am I even remotely butch. I'm just not very good at girl stuff. At my favorite coffee shop, a young guy who works behind the counter frequently wears a t-shirt that says, "You make me feel like a natural woman." Every time I see him, I feel reassured. If he feels like a natural woman, then there might be hope for me. When I was a teenager, the things that girls were supposed to care about never really registered in my life. Like boys, for instance. I tried several times to have a boyfriend. A couple of them turned out to be gay. On the rare occasions that I was asked out on a date, I became painfully introverted and verbally inept, trying to guess what my lines were when I didn't even know what play we were in. My most successful relationship was with the boyfriend who lived in New Jersey. I lived in Ohio. Growing up, it never occurred to me, mercifully, that perhaps I was unsuccessful with boys because I was meant to look at girls. At the time, I would have been utterly unequipped to deal with the notion. I suppose the warning signs should have been obvious. Other girls developed crushes on Burt Reynolds, while I had a thing for Christy McNichol. Other girls loved the Bee Gees, while my favorite band was Queen. What does it mean to be a natural woman? While I was trying to get pregnant, I went to a birthday party to which one of the guests brought her 3-week-old daughter. When baby entered the room, heads spun faster than Linda Blair's. Women clustered around the still puckery little girl, whose sandy blonde hair fell onto her forehead, whose tiny, dime-size eyes were closed in sleep. Within seconds, a line formed to hold her. Most of the people at the party were lesbians who had no children of their own, although some were in the process of trying to get pregnant. As each person held the baby, someone else would invariably comment, in a tone of coy innuendo, "You look really natural there." Eventually, the baby was passed to me. I sat in an armchair, believing, as I do, that it is always best to sit down when holding an infant, in the same way that it's best to wear gloves and a hat when facing a hazardous situation such as a dead bird on the porch. I tried not to move and barely breathed, convinced that she might suffer sudden infant death syndrome while lying in my arms. Eventually, as was bound to happen, someone looked at me and said, "You're looking really natural. Wink, wink. So does AstroTurf, I thought. I certainly didn't feel natural. I felt fraught with danger. I was aware that at any moment, Pookie's head could fall off. She could become fatally overheated in her fleece receiving blanket. She could smother in her onesie. I felt like a distant cousin to the natural woman, and maybe would have felt even more unnatural as a pregnant woman. But still, I wanted to know what it would feel like to grow a baby. I wanted to know how it would feel to nurse. I wanted to know if I could give birth. Now that Jane is pregnant, I acknowledge that I don't know what I'm doing, but not that I don't know what's best for her. I have granted myself the solemn responsibility of being Jane's protector, although some tiny part of me admits that she has not asked me to do this. I am bossy by temperament, an inclination that is growing in direct proportion to Jane's rising HCG level. I shoot directions at her like telegrams. Do this. Stop. Do that. Stop. I want her to follow my directions because I am sure it will be good for both her and the baby. I could lighten up, I think, but I don't. Go take a nap, I tell Jane, for the 4th or 5th time today. I don't want to, she says. You seem tired. I'm fine. It would be good for you. I'm fine. Okay, whatever. It's just that you won't have as much time to sleep during the week, and I know how tired you were last week. Jane glares at me. Her lips are pursed and tight. You can't be so pushy about what I do or don't do, and what I eat or don't eat, and when I sleep or don't sleep. She goes on. This is absolutely our baby, but it's my pregnancy. She is lying on the sofa, covered with cats and sections of last Sunday's New York Times. I stand by the side of the coffee table as she talks, but inside, I'm running. I hate her anger, even more so when I suspect she's right. I dodge. I'm sorry, I say. I didn't know I had upset you. This is bullshit. I know Jane well enough to know exactly when I am pushing her too hard, but I continued anyway for reasons that I do not fully understand. My eyes are stinging. Don't cry, I think. Don't get angry. Don't look hurt. I tell myself that she has every right to say what she has said, every right to feel the way she does. I even partly believe this. I also know that repeating it to myself will throw a wet tarp on my own smoldering feelings. I come from a family that rarely has a good idea about how to deal with anger, especially among other family members. We've tried lots of approaches, from rage to denial to Valium. As for myself, I generally stick with passive aggression, followed by retreat. Jane thinks we're all nuts. It's not until the next morning, when I wake up exhausted and depressed, that I realize there might be something bigger going on. I find it impossible to focus on anything. I sit at my computer and obsessively browse the sections for dads on babycenter.com. I don't know what exactly I am looking for, but I know that the sections for new moms do not apply to me. I am not pregnant. My breasts don't hurt. I don't throw up before breakfast. At the same time, as much as I might empathize with the men, the fact remains that I am fundamentally an outsider in the dad section. I don't know where I belong. I am in limbo between being a mom and not being a mom, and being a dad and not being a dad. The phone rings. It is Jane's mother. She asks how the mom-to-be is doing. I say she's doing great. Pretty tired, but not too nauseous. And how is the mom-to-be's, helper?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?